In this short video, we're going to introduce you to the wonderful world of otters, how they live and the threats they face. We'll also be giving you some hints and tips for finding signs of otters in your area. So let's get started. When you think of otters, do you think of those cute videos of otters linking arms while they float around asleep? Or of otters juggling pebbles? You might be surprised to find that none of those otters are actually the species we have in Scotland, the European otter, scientific name Lutra lutra. There are at least 13 different species of otter across the world, and our native otter is just one of them. It's sometimes known as the Eurasian otter, as it can be found from the British Isles right across to South Asia, North Africa, and even Russia. Populations are declining in other parts of its range, however, making our population in Scotland even more important. Let's take a moment to look at the otter. Can you see its flat head and broad muzzle surrounded by long, stiff whiskers? Look at that long, slinky body and thick, tapering tail. This, along with webbed feet and big paws, mean that otters are really well adapted for swimming in our rivers, ponds and seas. They spend lots of time in the water, either swimming or diving for food. But wouldn't they get cold during all that time spent in the water? Well, actually, they have 2 layers of fur, a long coarse outer layer and a really dense underfur which traps air. This layer of trapped air keeps the otter warm and dry. Interestingly, if otters hunt in salty seawater, they need to wash their fur regularly in fresh water, such as a puddle or a stream, in order to maintain their coat's waterproofing and insulating qualities. Their eyes are also fascinating. They can change the curvature of the lens within their eye, allowing them to see just as clearly underwater as above. However, if it's nighttime or if the water is murky, they'll have to rely on their sensitive whiskers to find food. More than 70% of the otter's diet is made up of fish, although they'll also eat shellfish and amphibians such as frogs and toads. They concentrate on slow-moving, bottom-living or resting fish like eels or young salmon, as they are easier to catch, so the otter uses up less energy finding food. These fish also tend to be inactive at night, which might explain why otters in our inland rivers and ponds are generally nocturnal. In contrast, our coastal otters are generally active during the day. Do you think this is linked to their food supply? Or do you think it's linked to there being less threat from disturbance? If our coastal otters are disturbed, they can quickly swim far out to sea for safety. Otters living in our rivers and streams, however, might find it more difficult to make a quick escape. One to think about. So what does an otter patch or territory look like? As with all animals, where otters live depends on where they can get the 2 most important resources for survival: food and shelter. So they like to be close to water for food, but they also spend time resting on land in underground holts and on above ground resting places called couches. Otter holts are found in natural cavities such as tree roots on riverbanks, or in amongst boulders. Couches may be in amongst thick vegetation such as reeds, or they may just be small dents in the ground. An otter will have lots of resting places dotted throughout their territory spanning many kilometres, some of which may be marked with sprint. That's sweet-smelling, dark, crumbly otter poo containing fish scales, bones, and communicating their presence to other otters. Next time you're out and about near water, Why not look for signs of otters? Sprinting sites tend to be on prominent places such as the top of grass tussocks, large rocks, or near bridges. You might spot some otter slides, areas of smooth, flattened vegetation where otters enter and exit the water. Look on sandy or muddy patches along the water's edge for footprints. Otter prints have 5 toe pads and the webbing between the toes may be visible in the print. Listen out for otter vocalizations, such as their shrill call that some compare to the sound of a squeaky wheelbarrow. We are very fortunate to have a healthy otter population in Scotland, but this was not always the case. Numbers across the UK plummeted in the 1970s as a result of hunting and certain pesticides in our watercourses. Otters now have legal protection and the offending pesticides have been banned, but there are still threats from pollution, habitat loss of connection between otter territories, deaths on our roads, and more. We want to do everything we can to protect our precious and globally important population of otters. So it's important to make sure that we don't disturb otters, in particular around their resting places. There's lots of great work going on by conservation organisations across the country, improving habitats for otters and other wildlife. Visit the Scottish Wildlife Trust website to find out more.